I think we'll get started for now, and I'm sure people will shuffle in. I'm JC Riley. I'm the editor of Atlanta Review, and I'm so excited to have this reading tonight and tomorrow night. I'm so excited because it's the first time we've ever done this, and I'm always curious about the people who, submit our poems, and it's nice to see faces. So I will ask you all to please just, I'll read your name. If you just read the poems, I know we're poets and we tend to want to explain everything, but in order that we can be in a timely, uh, get through this in a timely way, especially since many people will probably read two poems, I would appreciate if you could, limit to zero your uh, introductions. So is Tara Connor here? Our first reader is Tara Connor.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Can you, everyone hear her?
All right. I'm going to read first a poem called Proof. The sky is gunpowder gray, too dark to signify anything good, especially now, just after midday. Ignoring as best I can a wind that chills, its icy fingertips sneaking into my collar, up my sleeves, I walk through the cemetery, wishing for spring. Leaves skirmish at my feet, reenacting battles fought in the fall with more passion and greater numbers. They spin in tight circles as a compass and fly away at unexpected angles, one by one. Trees bow their heads before the furious wind, like dishonorable husbands caught in a lie, wishing they had leaves to hide their faces. Toppled stones are broken teeth snarling from crusted, dirty snow, when a spark of color pulls my eye away. A tiny bird on a branch, feathers too bright for this day, is returned from its winter home. And so it must be spring, for who am I to question a brave and golden certainty perched on a limb? And for my second poem, I will share with you one called Mother-Daughter Radio. When you asked me how to request an absentee ballot, my eyes prickled with happy tears. Away at college, you remembered to vote and weren't embarrassed to ask me how it's done. And I thought then, we're going to be okay, you and me, in this new world of ours, with all our shorthand, our subtext, that fierce love and the distance that stretches the filament of care to the width of a wire, an unbreakable conveyance that fills the space that lies now between us with the words we've already spoken, where they vibrate together, repeating themselves. So it's as though we've always only just stopped speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Hollis Kurman is our next reader. And y'all, if you want to say what page your poem is on, that's totally fine. Anyway, Hollis.
Not sure I know.
Well, yeah, well, I'm sure yours will get there at some point.
Sorry, yes. I'm calling in from Amsterdam, so we're 6 hours ahead of you here. Okay, the first poem I'm going to read is called Missing. It took her about 3 weeks not to hear them. The songbirds had not followed her and her boxes, those few short miles down the mountain, not even the oddly heavy box with her beloved in it, no longer whistling. How much is a paved driveway worth in morning bird calls? One cardinal coloratura in its siren flash across low sky, or the Morse coding of mourning doves. She missed the insistence of tufted titmice as she set the breakfast table, and even the cartoon cackle and drum of the woodpeckers. Without realizing, they had come to think of these birds as their birds, these calls as theirs. He had his stones, she her blooms, but birdsong they shared. As he faded, the coos and chirps made for good conversation or distraction, American goldfinches' squeaking sun into the quiet. Only sparrows now, she said, not wanting to suggest ordinariness or ingratitude for this perfect place with its mountain breezes. Being this close to town is a mixed blessing. And when he finally stopped whistling, he took the bird song with him. And the second poem is called Wind Chimes. The wind was her weapon, these keys are chimes. Hollow, happy sound below the urban radar, masking the shortness of breath that welcomes grief. In the car later, we wonder aloud, who would speak for us, tell our story, and whether our lives should be condensed to 1 hour, to 4 speakers, or maybe 6. And is it fair to ask loved ones and not so loved ones to sit through 2.5 hours of speeches, stories, and slides? Though if 1 hour less, we would have come to know her less, felt less when we embraced them later, and then later again, less, wordless, while we wondered what could be said about us, and who would say it. Who knows enough of all our sides, really, from then and from now and from whenever it turns out to be, to say, yes, we knew you. Who loved me then, in those places and times, and who knows me less now, but loves me more than those who may know me now, but love me less? It is too late now to create images not created then. They will have to take your word for it. They mentioned it had started with a headache, unheeded, an innocent asking for aspirin. We are alive and we ride into the rain. Windshield wipers, our only conversation. Thank you.
Our next reader is Phil Goldstein.
Hi. So the first poem is from the issue. I think it's on 21 or 22. I can't exactly remember. And it's When I Think About There Ever Being Someone Else after Vivi Francis, specifically after I've Been Thinking About Love Again. When someone you love dies, part of you dies with them. I read that in a grief support group pamphlet. Really? I mean, really? The truth is a huge chunk of you goes. A Texas-sized piece of you as Greenland breaks off, sizzles all at once, flooding the seas with everything you'll never hold again. Put that in the pamphlet. If I said, I will never love again, would it be because I couldn't, or because I wouldn't allow myself to let the wolves gaze with hunger and lust at the sight of my chest with its still beating heart? They're out there, waiting, aching for scarlet against the snow. And this next poem is called An Alphabet of Longing. An unkindness of ravens sings in the violet. All I have left is the sound of your voice, electronic. Anything I do is a pale wraith of what once was. Burning wood finds its purpose inside our home. Cellar doors latch shut, their bright green paint a hint of spring. Chrysanthemums bloom twice, growing in beauty. Death follows, dreamlike. Each glint of your eyes, a symphony of light. Frozen walks we went on never seem painful. Ghosts sound lonesome in the attic. Haunt me, please, I dare you. I ate something today, don't worry. January has come, an endless blur of white and blue. Nights paw restlessly on the chessboard. Limestone slabs get warm from wood we gathered long ago. Move backwards with me, please, I dare you. Naked, alone, the bathroom grows cold. Out here, the sky unfurls itself at night, paints the road in its darkness. Questions grow like mushrooms near tree roots. Rejoice, our friends say. You have so much to live for. Shadows cast spells among the eaves. Shock grows weary like a dog out too long. Sandals sit unused in a wicker basket, always winter. Slur of your name being spoken by anyone. Such is the way of all flesh, they say, to dust from fire. The ravens circle closer. Under the blankets, our two cats search for you fruitlessly. Violets used to sprout on the walkway, always winter. Why is disease so indiscriminate? You used to grow chrysanthemums. You'd like the January light growing in strength. You'd love it here. You'd love here. You'd love. You did.
Great. Our next reader is Daemon.
My poem is on, wrong book. My poem is on page 12. Jilted. Too cold that January to wander desolate paths between exhibits at the National Zoo, my friend and I sought comfort in the primate house, where she sat raptly listening to a speaker discuss mating behaviors of marmosets. Broken-hearted, a romance having ended just days before, I detached myself, stood apart, with my oversized black wool coat hanging loosely off my shoulders as I leaned against the glass of an empty enclosure, feeling sorry for myself and alone in the world, yet again unnoticed and wretched. A tap at the glass disturbed my misery. I looked right and left again, saw only people watching marmoset antics. Hearing the tap once more, I swiveled to look behind me and fell in love afresh. The most handsome of males, muscular physique and massive shoulders, body a shimmering black with silver mantle, stood close with only a pane of glass between us, face inches from mine. Our eyes met, our gaze held. My heart thumped, every nerve tingled with the electricity promised in love stories, but he shook his head in disbelief or in disgust. He broke the gaze, turned his back to me, and once again, knuckle walked into the darkness. And that did happen. The next poem is from my book, and it is called By Flowers. It is a reverse abecedarian. Zinnias, Mama says, are her favorite flowers. Yesterday, her most beloved was Xerochrysum, the paper daisy, or straw flower, which Mama knew the scientific name for because her aunt, Verlee, was an amateur horticulturist, unusually expert at pinching leaves and stems to root in her greenhouse. And suddenly, Mama most prefers scabiosa, or pincushion flower, but no, salvia, she says, red spikes, vibrant and thrilling, as she recalls rare, quiet moments in Verlee's mini gardens, among peonies and tulips in the spring border, while her other aunt, Irene, sat in the shade sipping sweet iced tea, nodding as Mama headed to the vegetable garden to set out marigolds between rows of tomato seedlings. Late in the day, the listing of flowers falls away. Light fades, keening begins. Sundowning that closes the morning glory's bloom, jabbering nonsense that blossoms into rage. Help her remember Iris, purple bearded lovelies she planted behind her beauty shop. Hope she will recall how they rebloomed as perfect as before. Give her the courage to forget me not. She's back, if only briefly, eager to remind me that the most special flowers, daylilies, are for daughters, or maybe mothers, she isn't sure. Calls up one more favorite. Then by flowers, our therapy is done, because she has remembered from zinnia, a symbol of enduring, to anemone, fragile flower of such short life.
Thank you so much. That was two, right? My brain, where's my brain? Is Alan Stein here? Oh, is that you? Samsung SMG99? Okay, we'll come
Oh.
back.
No, I'm Mr. Ginsburg. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Susan Saylor? Daniel Ginsburg?
I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan. Sorry about that.
My poem Squid Jigging is on page 46. Squid jigging. Say those words out loud, squishy, soft. Two accents like two eyes, a boat's lights. Get the scene. A boat's lights shine at night on sea, where squids rise soft, squishy, light drawn skin camouflaging as they surface. Pulsing dots of color from dark to sparkling. Jig lures tempt them to latch on, pulled up to become starters for your next meal. Sometimes what lies deep shouldn't surface when bright lights lure. Pulled to the dark, the depths, memories of the one who got away, the one who didn't. And I'll read a second poem. It's a ghazal. The title comes from Whitman's Song of Myself. Out of hopeful green stuff, drab brown trees belie the still green grass. Their nudity contrasts earth keen cover grass. I find a four-leaf clover hiding in the backyard. No extra luck, but my bare toes like the feel of grass. Childhood chore, root out clover growing in lawn. I fill paper bags with it, find treasures in grass. Whitman's response, the handkerchief of the Lord, when in his poem a child asks, what is the grass? Roots, stem, leaf, flower, unite to make the whole. Together, multitudes gleam in an acre of grass. A democratic field, all plants receive enough when sun and rain team up to feed the grass. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Daniel Ginsburg here?
I'm here. Can you see
Okay.
me?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah. There you are. Sorry.
wonderful. The first poem I'm going to read is called Chosen, and that's in the current issue of Atlanta Review at pages 18 and 19. And it refers to Ahava, which is a girl's name in Hebrew meaning love. This is chosen for Ahava. You are composed in a petri dish from your mother's egg and my sperm, besides cultures of your possible siblings. In a climate-controlled room, a physician studied you, a particle beneath his powerful microscope. He chose you. I asked, why not the fourth embryo? He warned, too much living material. You then were implanted in your mother, and your potential siblings were frozen for years before she and I gave them to science, feeling a strangely tangible grief. I tell you this so that you might know yourself. You're the most natural of unnatural selections. 2. The day you were born, I unwrapped you from your pink striped blanket and lay on the hospital couch. On my bare chest, I rested you, your faint breaths on my nipple, your cheek so soft against my ribs, your warm body like a heating pad. In one hand, I cupped your head that you couldn't yet support and felt fuzz that would soon fall away. In the other, I squeezed your little feet. There, in fluorescent light, you opened your eyes, revealing their blue-gray pigment. In your swirl, I saw myself, so I swam. And I'm going to read a second poem called Fly Trap. This appeared in the Northern Virginia Review in 2022. Fly Trap. Oh, will you walk with me as I would walk with you? There, a little red brick house from the Second World War, front stoop framed with fuchsia azaleas, where Oma smiled, tow blonde hair wind-blown as pollen, the white dogwood flowers, a wedding gown, Spider-Man doll hanging from a web of yarn all winter, though new folks cut the tree to a stump once I grew. Oh, follow me past our old neighbor's electric truck, streaked with a lightning bolt, to the back garden, where at dusk I cradled fireflies, my fingers a Venus flytrap, and my eyes flickered to sleep beside a glass jar lantern. But let's go deeper, around the huge oak trunks to the grave that Dad dug for Abigail, our first dog. I carved a marker that degraded like all things, recited Kaddish at night on this ground. I caught life's light in my hands. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jamie Wendt is our next reader.
Hello. My poem in the Atlanta Review is called If a Tree Falls in Israel, and it's on page 57. And it's an ekphrastic poem based off of a photograph that's in the subtitle. If a tree falls in Israel. Before a sickly tree is cut down by our reluctant hands, we pray like the movement of the sea. Toward Mecca, your forehead touches the prayer rug laid over sand, as my head and shoulders are draped in a wool talit facing Jerusalem. There are no spoken words, just breeze and the rustle of sand. We sway like branches of different trees, and the biblical roots are deep within us. Our toes curl in our lumberjack boots as we proceed together toward the unhealthy trunk, ill bark, peeling body, leaves deprived of growth, no fruit bearing or budding, little shade. No gifts, and now the tree is tipping, its possible damage imminent. When a tree must be cut down, we eulogize its lifetime of sunsets, the singular landscape this tree witnessed, the birds and bugs who sheltered there, lovers who lusted and smoked, rested alone, children who climbed and swung in hammocks. Here, tree, is where shadow absorbs the tangible, where a hole covered by new dirt becomes just another place to burrow, to disappear. And then I'll read a second poem. I have a second book coming out in March called Laughing in Yiddish, and it'll be published by Broadstone Books. And so this is from that book. This poem's called Strange Worlds, which is after a painting by Tojo Skeller. The bustling swirl of Chicago commuters rush from the L like speeding hands on a broken clock crashing into each other. The old religious man's eyes wrinkle, droop, speak a wordless yield, tight-lipped, as he keeps his stiffened back to the burgeoning scene behind him, a hurricane of fashionable suits. Newspapers stack loud headlines across the belly of morning. Bold troubles he cannot read, scooped up in rolled bundles. The elevated trains rumble into the loop. I'll hide here, under the tracks. Vibrations will not rescind his ghostly gaze, straight, lost, furrowed, exposing the circling cycle of men beyond the past. He will not stir from his desire for the familiar elsewhere, where people know the land they stand on. No one here will ever look like me. He doesn't know how anyone sleeps in this city. Trenches curl under his red eyes, absorbing the whirlpool of color, fractured news, sharp angles, energy tossed like coins to breezy jazz, rained over this untuned, strange city. Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Our next reader is Beth Toner.
Hi. So the first poem I'm reading is from the issue. I don't know what page it's on, but it's called Mood Ring. I wanted a mood ring almost as much as I wanted a wide-toothed comb with an outsized handle to stick in the back pocket of the Levi bell-bottoms Mom wouldn't buy me for the longest time. Almost as much as I wanted that 7-Up Bonnie Bell lip smacker that I saved 10 weeks of my quarter-a-week allowance for. Almost as much as I wanted skinnier thighs to tuck into those bell bottoms, thighs that could dance any kind of rhythm at the middle school dance or land any kind of high kick at cheerleading tryouts, and that would never, ever be described as thunder thighs. I wanted that piece of glass set in cheap metal that turned skin green as much as I wanted a life-sized Sean Cassidy poster, hazel eyes and feathered hair watching benevolently over my shag carpet and paisley patterned bedroom, as much as I wanted to be Commander Adama's daughter Athena or Princess Leia Organa, beautiful, yes, and powerful and smart, outwitting universes fueled by testosterone. As much as I wanted a different answer to the question, how long will Daddy live? A mood ring contains liquid crystals that change colors in response to small changes in temperature. I should have said to my mother when she told me, "Don't waste your allowance on that cheap thing." Finger temperature is significantly determined by peripheral blood flow, which is modulated by the autonomic nervous system, I would have said, as I waved my hand in her face, stone yellow as I tried to find my father in a nest of chest tubes and ECG wires, stone black as I sat in my itchy wool funeral skirt, classmates sympathetically lined up behind me, stone green, stolen forever as Mom packed up Levi's, lip smacker, Sean Cassidy, and moved us to adulthood. The second poem is Ode to My Mother's Hands. It took my sister and the hospice nurse half an hour to remove your jewelry after you died. How many rings did they wrestle over your knotted fingers? Who wears jewelry to hospice anyway? Those hands, so accustomed to adornments, hands held as you slipped from this world as you wished, not alone in death. Hands you withdrew when others hovered, fussing as you began your last journey. You used those hands to fuss for others, not they for you. Instruments of complicity with the patriarchy, for what other tools were you given? Beautiful hands, beautiful face, beautiful body, beautiful heart, but always the hands extended for the circle of gold and diamonds. That meant love, yes, you never stopped believing in love, but also security, a home both figurative and literal. Hands that gripped narratives, true and false, tightly. Hands that kneaded dough, polished silver, wrote thank you notes, copied recipes. Hands that so often failed to catch you when you fell. Hands whose touch I remember most feeling after all other supports had fallen away. Thank you.
Carol, I can't seem to get you to work.
Right. I apologize, and I teach on Zoom, but the video isn't starting. So I will just read. So this is the poem in the issue, and it's on page 76 and 77. It's called Seabirds. Here on a spit of land at the edge of the country, where in college my friends and I would cross the border for dinner, be waved through customs, zip back to the dorms before midnight. A biologist explains the evolution of seabirds, the strutters, the pickers, how one beak narrowing could extract crustaceans buried in the sand, while another's beak broadening into a pouch scoops fish out of the waves. My husband, always with an opinion, is retreating, beginning to wander in a labyrinth I cannot follow. His path, not predictable as the tide pulsing in and out, is punctuated by long silences 1 minute, outbursts of anger the next. The doctors fluctuate between a show of certainty, suggesting medications not to cure, but to slow, and wavering, demonstrating too clearly what they cannot predict. I can't say I have the needed patience, spend too much time dreaming of escape, longing even for the sub-zero temperatures of Siberia. Just now, the biologist points out a black oyster catcher on an outcrop of rock, legs covered in what looks like flesh stockings, red beak, yellow eye, rimmed red. It's rat-a-tat-tat, insistent. He stabs the air, vigilant over the shoreline, he claims.
Thank you.
And then the second poem is called Apprentice Shaman. Days she works in a Soviet-era factory, the lathe creaky as if it had arthritis, her thick fingers not as nimble as they once were. But nights she studies with a Buryat shaman to prepare for her real work. If the universe is divided into three worlds, the upper, the earth, the underworld, that day on the banks of Lake Baikal, the apprentice shaman hovered among them. Trees hung with ribbons, red for supplication to the sun spirits, green to protect nature, blue for spirits of the sky. We stood on a bank that jutted over the water. Waves of ice were frozen mid-motion, sharp as incisors in the sub-zero cold. A blue so bright it hurt the eyes. Holding a drum tambourine to her chest, she beat and chanted to summon the spirits. That night, we lay on cots in the one-room cabin. A growl escaped her lips as if a Siberian wolf were trapped inside, threatening or protecting, I did not know which. Thank you.
That was nice. Thank you so much. Our next reader is Joanne Mort.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for this, JC. It's so great to see you. And thank you to Atlanta Review for supporting my work for the last few years. This is a poem called Route 443. There are notes in the poem in the magazine. It's on page 89. I won't read the notes, just to say, since I was told not to, just to say that it is a road that sort of meanders between Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, and in the poem empties out into East Jerusalem. Route 443. White vans parked by the sides, checkpoints, and a feeble bridge reinforced with electronic eyes across the upper rim. This road is a river that separates the flow of Israel from a non-Palestine. Villages line the banks, home to what seems like an endless supply of workers, but really full of men mostly, who rise at dawn to cross, to earn, to feed their families. Each person has a story, birth date and his, her, hours running down. A very human task made less than human. White vans like floating sails on the asphalt, delivering day laborers to build, to cook, to clean. In darkness, they are empty hulks asleep, waiting for their passengers. From there, the navigation directs me to Atarot, where factories sit atop the cliff edge of the West Bank. White apartment block buildings, transport trucks parked outside, their drivers asleep before morning haul. No signs in Hebrew, just servants doing tasks. From the backside streets emptying onto Nablus Road, Beit Hanina, music of lights and flares, signs point to the city center, to a Jerusalem without a true center, many centers, too many gods. And thank you. And this poem is from the current issue of Stand magazine in the UK. These are both poems in my first book that will be published by Arrowsmith this spring. This poem's called Adornment. On my first trip to Paris, I bought a multicolored scarf, violet with blueberries, for my mother, who left it on a bar stool at the Bluebell Inn. She was there to pick up men. I gave her the violet and blueberry scarf, and she wore it once or twice, perhaps. She went to pick up men and left it, on a bar stool when she was giggling with her girlfriends. She wore it once or twice, perhaps, as she dressed in outfits distinct from her past on a bar stool, giggling with her girlfriends. She tried to be the carefree widow. I bought her a scarf on my first trip to Paris. It's that scarf I see as she tucks her napkin in her sweater to soak up the tomato sauce across from me in the restaurant. Her once high cheekbones are sagging as she sits back in her chair. To where did the inches disappear? I see her now in me as I stare in the mirror. She wore it, once or twice perhaps, and all the other things she gave me, a Beged or suede jacket, now more than 50 years old. She was so beautiful, but when I look into the mirror, I see her sagging cheekbones, and I feel inches fly from beneath my feet. Maybe the mirror lies, memories too. I try to contain the love as I grasp a diamond locket around my neck. From her mother to mine to me, they are dead, and I adorn myself with these bits of memory. I gave her the violet and blueberry scarf and remember it as if it were yesterday. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Our next reader is Jessa Brown.
Hiya. I'm going to read my poem Pigeons from page 7 of the new Atlanta Review. Pigeons. In particular, this green gilded gammy one on platform 4. These heart-shaped and holdable bodies that break into bitter airborne freight, also posing as the ring of my sister's phone, the clack of her wedding band picking it up. A flap announces the silence that follows, the holding of the line. I watch the bird stagger through the sky, the drain between ground and cloud. My sister and I are not speaking, but sometimes I call her on the phone. I weigh that in my hand. And then the next poem I'm going to read is called Mary Boast. The archivist is a woman. The archivist likes her tea dark, coffee white. She's a woman and she likes to walk the streets at dark, shadow slight. She rests lightly on what she's looking for. A woman once told her she was in the dark about this place, her fingers lightly printing the glass of the new local history library, apparently homeless or not even a woman. Mary barely lets herself dream in the dark about this woman with the lightly lacerated mark on her face, her body braced against the library. The archivist goes on accessioning photographs of women in the dark, the faces frowning slightly as they're coffined into the library's photographs. They are still. The only movements as the film exposed were their ghosts. Mary signs the paperwork. The archivist is a woman. The year is 1972. She knows where she is. She wears tweed and the freedom of Southwark. Her horn-rimmed pride. Her name is Mary Boast. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much. Our next reader is Dion O'Reilly. Is she here?
Yes, I am here. Hi. Alrighty then. I don't know what page it's on, but it's a poem called Ringo Starr. I assume most of you know who Ringo Starr is, but some people might know he was left-handed, but used a right-handed drum set, and that's why his sound was so unique. Ringo Starr, you weren't the one I loved, I must confess. I didn't have the depth yet. It was Paul, of course. His droopy eyes and putty lips, baby-like, unthreatening, despite the then brutal sexiness of the songs. When I thought I'd grown up, I loved John, genius rebel. Loved how dismissive he was, naked with his thick-haired wife for weeks, legs and arms wrapped round her, posed for Leibowitz like a suckling pig. I loved how he'd make a scene, but when I busted through my anger, thought I'd found something like a third eye, it was George, the soulful one I adored, the one whose guitar gently wept. Oh, the many faces of a false God, fragments of a false self, everything I craved. Paul, pretty, John, smart, George, the seeker. Ovid said, the cause is hidden, the effect is visible. So now, Ringo, you're looking better. Sticks as quick as a sylph's flickering wings, invisible till we wake up to the impossible source of it all. Not you, of course, but you were closest. Offbeat mystery I barely noticed. Inverse glamour, southpaw of darkness in a right-hand world. Alive with a trick rhythm, you did your best with the kit you were given. So now when I hear your lacy pattern bring come together, those other sweet boys, they're waves. But you're the ocean under. So the second one is called Post-Anthropocene, and the Anthropocene is the age of humans. Post-Anthropocene means after the age of humans, basically when we are extinct. Post-Anthropocene. Can we imagine such emptiness, such quiet? Every bit of us gone. The jackal-mouthed and gospel wild, razor wire, keeping out the needful of our kind. Even the ruins of holy cities flattened by viral belief. We have no proof of our own definitive end, no name for the never seen, for the tangle of worms and beetles thriving on us. No name for whatever creature comes next, but let them be thoughtless, cleaned of reason, dumb as water, only a trace of us left inside them and above them and everywhere they look. I guess I had beetles in both poems. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next reader is Susan Nisenbaum Becker. I saw her on the list.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Thanks for making this happen, JC. It's really a great evening. It's wonderful to hear these poems. My poem is on page 66. It's called Pietà. We can't get to the quarry's cloud-jammed surface, spring-fed dark, rock stairs built into the steep slope to fling ourselves into the unknown. He needs his legs to tread water and arms to push through the sunfish flashes, clustering for bread. We know now we can't take for granted his putting one foot in front of another, the natural momentum of a body falling forward, caught by the other leg and foot, we use the pool instead. The last time he would swim. How he loved to freewheel down the Ogunquit River at high, legs unanchored then, he of air and water. Now we make our way across uneven slate to sit on the pool's half-moon steps, slide our bodies in, rippling the water's perfect skin. He's not my son, I, not his mother, though in intimacy's tangles, aren't we all sometimes those shadowy selves to the other? And he's not dead, but dying, and I'm alive by a thread, already grieving. He's in my arms, cradled at neck and knees, hair haloing his face like the photo of him, sunball behind, his head a moon eclipsing the sunburst. He floats in the broken trees, broken sky fragments, arms outstretched like bird wings, legs dangling, stirs the water with his fingers, kicks gently his feet, not to propel, but to make a slow boil of drops that flash like mirrors, like mica in the sun, to scatter light that covers us all afternoon. This is something water does. I walk the concrete floor in circles from half-moon steps to the edge of the deep. He's buoyant in my arms, almost weightless, in this grief embrace, in this buoyant cradling. We laugh. I notice white birches, birdsong, splashes, smell of August rubrum lilies, salt. The leaf chandelier filters and exudes a fine pale green. Water to my chin on tiptoes before circling back, one more step, and I could drown us both. I'm not his mother, he not my son, but I bear him. We float, then touch down, bounce, touch down, until he's cold. The pool sorrows. Everything softens because this is the last, because he can't, because he still hungers for something. Thank you. So this is a new poem, not published yet, called Dear Crow. Dear Crow, why are you black? I'm black because I'm not a chestnut's mahogany scattered onto the grass, because I'm a lamp that stays dark. And when flying in a murder, anyone watching staggers. Dear Crow, why are you black? I'm so black, I'm nearly blue. Dear Crow, why are you blue? Because something in you is smashed like a window shattered by a rock, because you don't know that sometimes when there's a bloody end, there's a start. Oh, Crow, why are you blue? Because green is shrinking, because night has spread into morning and daylight's been sheared by hours. Dear Crow, why do you glister? Because my feathers are prisms that cut light into 100 hues. Crow dear, why do you screech? Because it's my song, the way I tally my wounds, the way I sing everything. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much. Our next reader is Terry Watada.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, great. Thank you for this opportunity, by the way. And thank you all to all the readers. Great listening. Anyway, this is from my book. This poem is from my book, the latest collection. The book is called The Mask, and this poem is called Masks. And I'm reading an excerpt from it. In this August time of festival, when warm breezes caress and humidity embraces, the season of Obon, the festival of the dead. There is no music that vibrates the air, no shrill whine of fue, no thump of taiko, no odori choreography. The girls and women stay at home. No food aromas that entice the throngs to come and laugh and sing and show and shout. No smoke to rise and envelop, to permeate clothes. But there are masks that cover and uncover the true self. The second poem is from, thank you. The second poem is from the issue, which I haven't got yet because Canada Post is on strike. Have been for 3 weeks, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And indefinite. I don't know how long it'll last. Anyway, this is called Kiyamacho, my father's home. Within a mountain of trees, my father's village in Japan. Their fragile, creaking house looks out onto rice fields and skeletal wooden racks of drying straw. My father began there, but I visited when it was just about ended. I was 7. Dad was in his 50s, uncle in his 70s, and auntie was 80-something. I had no idea, no inkling, but my father seemed sad all the time. Looking through the open shoji to the water-rooted rice plants slightly swaying in the hot breeze, I wondered about his childhood. Certainly different from mine in Canada, yet somehow the same. No rice fields, no toiling in city fields, no aging relatives, just the aching feeling that everything was disappearing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next reader is Andrea Carter Brown.
Hi, JC.
Hi.
Thank you for the issue. And thanks to all the other readers. I'm honored to be in your company. So I'm going to read the first poem. It's going to be the poem that's in the issue. It's called Apples of the Earth. It's on page 68. It has an epigraph, pomme de terre in German, apples of the earth. Pomme de terre in French, in German, Kartoffeln, from the Italian tartufo, like truffles, which potatoes resemble. Once in Dublin, stumbling on a farm stand, basket after basket of potatoes, different shapes, sizes, in shades from red to beige to brown to purple. The names struck me. Wish I had written them down. Colcannon tasted better after that. On lunch break, women from offices lined up at small sandwich shops, eating perched at a counter, most to go. Brown bread with nothing between the slices but coleslaw. Cheap, satisfying, tasty. I became a fan. In Amsterdam, lines form outside narrow storefronts that sell only small paper plates of frites, called by their French name here, too, topped with messy things, mostly plain or curry and mayonnaise. People stand around, fishing the fries out with little forks, trying not to drip grease on their coats. Is horse fat still the preferred frying medium. When we invaded Iraq after 9/11, the French refused to join our coalition. In a fit of pique, Congress passed a law renaming French fries freedom fries. That didn't last, although longer than expected. All over the world, people love pommes frites, not fried apples, but fried potatoes. Lost their connection to the soil, the distinctive texture, flavor, and color of each variety. In 7 years between 1845 and 1852, when potatoes rotted in the ground, prey to a new fungus, Ireland lost over a third of its population to starvation, death, and emigration. It took scientists 100 years to develop disease-resistant varieties. Immigrants flood Europe these days. In rural French farmers' markets, vendors now spoon out couscous from wide, shallow pans like suns, the last thing you buy before hurrying home. In my local farmers' market, all summer long, Ben sells a rotating variety of carrots, turnips, rutabagas, parsnips, Jerusalem artichokes, and potatoes. A new kind, mottled red and white skinned like paint ponies, gnarled but round, fit in the palm of your hand. Their name garbled in Ben's gruff, low voice. Sliced, the nutritious underskin is deep blood red, the flesh vivid white. Cooked, the colors do not fade, the flavor sweet, earthy, a meal in itself, these potatoes. And for my second poem, I guess there's a theme going on here with me. I'm going to read a poem that was published in Persimmon Tree this last summer, to a Corningware casserole on its diamond anniversary. Shallow, 8 inches square, the right size for 2. Tempered with Pyrex, warranted never to break. It seemed a good omen for a new marriage. This single piece survived that first marriage, endured decades into a second, moved 3 times, once cross-country. It's been burned repeatedly, gone straight from stovetop to oven to freezer and back without a crack. This from the same company that invented napalm. Think of the parents who lived through World War II giving Corningware wedding gifts to baby boomer sons and daughters who marched every spring on Washington to protest the war in Vietnam. We are at war again, have been these last 20 years, dropping smart bombs from drones that kill and maim, just like napalm. Looking at this relic, I remember the kitchen where I learned to cook, the years of protests, how by chance I was in Paris when the peace accords were finally signed. We live in a time of anniversaries. The end of World War I, D-Day, the liberation of Paris, the Berlin Wall going up, coming down, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, the 21st, the 22nd. We live in a time of flags at half-mast. Nowhere is safe. Or comes without grief. If only we would not crack, chip, or break. Guaranteed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's great. Is Tara Das here? Okay. And Letitia Juju? Okay. Our next reader is Joyce Myers. She's still here. And Linda Drattel.
I'm still here trying to
Oh, I'm
unmute.
sorry, Joyce. I didn't see you.
My poem is on page 37. Red Tail. The first surprise that he was there at all. We had glimpsed them in treetops, perched on wires above the roads, circling among clouds, watching for any movement on the ground that might be breakfast. Never before this close, just yards from our front door, next to the Chinese cherry, so lately leafless. The second surprise, his size, so hard to comprehend from a distance. Yet nothing majestic here. This is a reality show, earthy as excretion. Whatever that creature was, it's now a meal, pulled apart with such total absorption that my approach, camera and binoculars in hand, hardly registers. I squint to identify the long thing dangling from his mouth. Wonder aloud if it's a rodent's tail. You think it's an intestine. We watch, riveted, this transubstantiation from dead flesh to sinew, beak, and wing. The next poem is in my new book, Twisted Threads. The poem is called Fawns. Weather forecast. Partly cloudy, chance of showers. 2 days after the anniversary of the day the towers fell under that blue, blue sky, a week to equinox when Earth will hang in the balance. I mourn a dead fawn by the side of the road. 2 hurricanes and an earthquake in the past 2 weeks, and still I mourn a fawn. All summer, I watched my window for a pair of spotted fawns that sometimes grazed behind my house. Watched them grow as their spots began to fade. Watched them wander farther from their mother until they left her watchful eye. From behind the wheel, I hope the lifeless body beside the road is not one of my fawns. Like the woman in the checkout line telling the cashier that she prayed for the hurricane not to hit Puerto Rico, where her niece lives. I wonder about the God she prays to, who would answer a prayer to move a hurricane so that only nieces on other islands, along with mothers, daughters, brothers, sons of strangers, would lie in the path of destruction. Wonder why the fawns I watched matter more than any other, or why they should. Ponder the difference between prayer and lobbying. Which one works better and why? Thank you.
That was wonderful. Is there anybody here who hasn't had a chance to read that? I had my list, but I might have missed somebody. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for being here and for making this so great. I enjoyed all of your poems. And it was really great to see you and to meet you. And don't forget, tomorrow we have another reading if you have some time. Same bat station, same bat time. Any last words from anybody? Want to say anything?
Just gratitude you for making this evening possible.
I was happy to.
Thank you.
I'd like to say that Atlanta Review has the most lovely acceptance letter of anybody. So thank you for such a sweet acceptance letter.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it.
And the work was so beautiful. Thank you.
It was really wonderful to meet you and to hear all your lovely poems. Our spring issue will be out hopefully in April. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.